Welcome back to another Darktable tutorial. In this video, we're going to be learning about how to use some of the more common modules in Darktable for applying effects and edits to raw images. This will also work for images that are not raw images. If you don't have some, so I've downloaded a couple different ones here, and I got them from WeSaturate.com. I'll include the link in the description of this video. It's just a free website. You have to sign up, but it's free, and it's not. It's just public domain. Artists, photographers sharing their images with other people. And so you click on an image, and then you can download the raw version in some cases, not all of them, but you can download the JPEG or the raw version, and then you can edit that image. And so not all of them have an option for raw, but a lot of them do. And there's just some pretty cool images. So here's one that doesn't let you download the raw. So just make sure if you want to get a raw image, you can do some searches through here, and there's some really good high quality. They're pretty large image sizes too. But anyway, that's WeSaturate.com, and that's where I got these from. I'll include the links for these also. But you can see there are different file extensions too for RAW. So this is a .nef, .dng, .cr2, .arw. So depending on what camera you're shooting with, it has a different format for RAW. But since Darktable is amazing, it can interpret all of those, and it knows how to read all types of RAW files. So what we can do is we can either drag and drop these in. We can select them all and drag all of them in. Or we can just go over here under import and go to folder and just import the entire folder. So I'll just go select the folder and go to open. And now they're all imported in here into Darktable. Let's apply some modules and do some edits to this picture here. I'm going to double click on it to bring it into the darkroom. And we can quickly jump between any of those ones. If we look here across the bottom, we can double click and quickly jump into any of the ones that are in our light table without actually having to go into light table to grab them. And so when we're in darkroom, we can do that. We can just double click. But let's do this one here, just because the rest of these are already so perfect and they look so great already that all I'll probably do is end up making them look worse. So this one we can do some improvements on. So we see that it's sort of dark. This looks like one maybe you just like take on your phone. We can see what this was taken on by clicking image information. So this was taken with a Sony camera. But a lot of times pictures you'll just take quickly are going to look like this. It's not exposed very well. The sky's really bright, and so everything else is really dark. We want to try and bring out some of the detail. Again, I'm not really experienced in doing this type of color correction, but I just want to show you some of the modules that I think are good to start with. There's a lot of different directions we could take this, but we see what's happened already. We have the original, we have some sharpening that's happened, and then this base curve has been applied. And so the base curve, we could get in and adjust, but I wouldn't recommend it unless it looks really bad. So bad would be like, let's just reset this to default. So if it has the default base curve, it might look really dark like this. We could click and make our own base curve and see if we can make this look a little bit better, which maybe we can. Look at that. Just by doing this, we can make it look kind of, that looks not too bad, you know. If we want to see what it would look like, well, what should we do? Maybe we'll just leave this. Well, let's leave this base curve right here. Okay, so we've got our base curve adjusted, or we could use the one that it had, which was this Sony Alpha-like. But it looks like this particular image, sometimes it's better to adjust the curve a little differently than it had. So let's go back to that base curve we had because we were rocking it. So this is our own little base curve that we created. And now let's go to, sometimes I like to do, you've probably seen, I do exposure a lot. So let's go to the exposure. And it's good just to look at this histogram up here. This is just telling us to the far left is black pixels, to the far right is white pixels. So, and this is all of our data. This is kind of a chart of all of the pixels in our image from left to right. We see a dip in the middle here, and that's because like this dark area is everything here that was really kind of darker. And this light area is all the sky. And this middle is going to be stuff that's sort of like grays kind of in the middle. So it's not really having to do much with color, although the color is overlaid behind, you can see. But really this is going to be a chart of our light and dark pixels in the image. We don't want this data to ever go off to the left or to the right. And that's what exposure adjusts, is the left and right of this histogram. So we can see if we drag this, we can squeeze it all up tight. And so everything is going to be starting at medium gray and going towards bright. That's why everything looks kind of weird. And if we drag this back the other direction, we're stretching it off. So half our chart is now over here, and we can't even see it. So everything that was there, all that detail, is now just black. We don't want that either. But it's a good idea. Let's go back to this button here. We'll let us reset it to how it was. So there's a little bit you can see in here. If I zoom in way close, there's a little bit of space in there where there's this white area, and then there's off the chart. So the chart has some space it could go. We're going to drag this, and you can even use the mouse, the scroll wheel, to get a really fine tune that. So we're going to drag this right here so that it's about just starting off there. And then the other side, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to drag this just so that the detail is right to the bottom there. That's what I like to do with exposure, is fill this all in without clipping any of the detail. We can check this little button down here. If we click this, this is our under and overexposed indicator. So we just see parts of the sky is overexposed, and anything that would be in blue would be really underexposed areas, and anything that is in red would be overexposed areas. So that's okay right there. I mean, we could, if we want to really keep that detail, we'd kind of have no blue and no red showing, but I think I'll leave that right there. We'll toggle this off. So that's exposure a little bit. Playing with that is a good first thing to do with your image. Then also levels is going to be a good thing too. And levels is over here in the tone group. So we click on this, and again, if we hover over, it tells us what these groups are. So we were in the basic group. Now let's go to, we did exposure. Now let's go to tone group, and let's change the levels a little bit. Since we played with exposure, we don't want to adjust this in point and out point. This is kind of the same thing. Black over here, white over here, and then the middle adjusts how the grays, or not necessarily the grays, but the mids are displayed, because it's kind of weird with color, and I don't even understand it exactly, but this is adjusting all the kind of the mid-tone. So we can drag this and sort of bring out some more color here, and it's sort of shifting the way this chart looks, but then we can come in and adjust that a little bit. Now we've kind of lost some detail in the sky, it looks like, though. But that's okay, because really we can adjust that in a little bit here. So I want to see the detail here, which we've actually made a big difference already to how it was before. If this is how it was before, this is how it looks now. And again, we've talked in the last video real quick, but let's just do this for fun. We can create a snapshot. So if we go to our original and we expand this snapshot over here, this is one that I took earlier. We don't want that to be there. We'll just click this to get rid of it. Click Take Snapshot. We'll always take a snapshot of whatever your image looks like currently in the dark room. And then now that we have the snapshot, let's go back and start editing. And we can enable this by clicking on it, left click on it. And now we can see here, we can see what our changes look like. So this is before and this is after. So really cool. That's looking good. We'll just keep it off to the left-hand side right now while we're making changes. And whenever we want, we can just drag and kind of overlay and see how it's looking. Okay, and we can do it from before too. We could take a snapshot at the exposure level, take snapshot, and then we can go to that one, and then we can see the difference, how it looked just at that exposure level. Does that make sense? So this is the difference between 5 and 6, between these two different edits, between exposure and the levels changes we made. So then we can see just what exactly did the levels do. Did it improve or did it hurt the quality of our image? And we see it's a little bit lighter up there, like on the roof and stuff. Anyway, let's put this over here. Let's turn that off for now. And let's look at one more thing that's good to do just for like photos in general. So white balance is something good. We can adjust the temperature. Temperature is usually in these like thousands of K. If you ever look on like an LED light bulb or like just different things, like the sun has a certain light temperature, and like the moon has a certain light temperature. So suppose this was taken in the moonlight, it might look more like this with a lower temperature. It'd look more like have a lot more blue, and the colors would look differently because the light source is different. So this temperature kind of adjusts the light source. So we probably want it to match a certain way, but if we have it go up higher, see it was at around 5,000, was it? Oh, we don't want to do that. Let's leave this on. I think we can reset to default how it was. So it was down here at 5,000. So maybe let's turn it up to about 6,000. That was kind of cool. And have it more of a yellow look. So all the reds and the blues, everything kind of is as if it has a more like an evening sunset on it. So we'll leave that. And we could adjust colors individually if our white balance was off. The way to check that, if you click your middle control wheel, you can zoom in and see this. So our whites are looking like they're being displayed pretty accurate, I think. It's hard to tell, but it's easy to tell if you have them really off. Sometimes you'll have like a lot of, it'll look like this or something. You'll have too much of a certain color, too much red or too much green in your whites. So you would adjust that by just coming down and adjusting this green slider here. But let's reset that to how it was. Let's put the temperature back to 7,000, 6,000. All right. There we go. And now since we made a bunch of changes over here, we see if ever we have two, like we have a base curve happening twice, we can get rid of that and kind of undo, not undo, but we can compress those into the same thing by clicking this compress history stack. And now those changes in the base curve have been combined. So look, we're losing some detail in our sky, but what I think I want to do with this, we're going to apply a vignette anyway, and I'm going to change the sky before I do that. Let's see if we can change the color of the sky. So to do that, there's a couple different things we could do. We've looked a little bit at this in this color. So this is our color group. We can do color correction, where we just change the color of everything in the picture in general. This sort of has a little bit of the same effect we were seeing with the color temperature that we just did. But here we're going to adjust the color of the sky, but at the expense of also adjusting the color of all the pixels. Like, look, the colors of the ground is changing too. So if we want to adjust the sky without affecting this down here, we don't want to use the color corrector. So I'm going to reset that to default. What we want to use is this color lookup table. It's down here under more modules. So this is a good one to do. Where's that at? I don't know if you do this on every photo. I passed it. Color lookup table. Color lookup table is going to let us choose a certain color. You can also do this by brightness, which might make more sense in this case. But let's choose a certain color, like what's happening in the sky there. So it's probably like this gray. We'll play more with this in other videos, but for the time being, we select a color like all of this color right now, and then we can adjust just that color without affecting everything else. But I want to make sure this has some more browns in it, so I don't think it'll affect the ground too much. So look, we can change this, we can add some more, make it look more like blue and purple in the sky without affecting everything else here. So that's kind of cool, and then we can see the clouds a little bit more in there. We can adjust the lightness or darkness of it, so we can really make that sky look really cool without changing everything else. So we're not applying a color layer over top of everything. We're just adjusting colors within this sort of white-gray range. This will make more sense as we play with it more in the future. But that looks pretty cool, right? So if we turn this off, we see how it looked before, really kind of flat, and the sky just makes everything look, I don't know, that blue sky, that's actually too much now that I really look at it. So we maybe adjust we can adjust the saturation here, so it's not quite so intense, but we can still give it that sort of a different look than the original photo had. And maybe we'll just, let's apply our vignette and just stop right there. We could bring out some more detail. Let's do one more just so we can get a little bit of experience with it. We can adjust the, under the basic group, we can go to shadows and highlights. So these are always good to adjust to, or a lot of times it can be to our advantage. If ever there's some dark parts like here that we want to bring out, or some of these shadows, we can adjust just the shadows here. Just for fun, let's adjust and see how that changes the look and feel of this image. So we can sort of brighten up sort of what's happening down here. We don't want to do it too much though. It wasn't so bad. And the highlights is going to adjust some of these highlight pixels too, so we can kind of give more detail into the sky there and really see those clouds a lot. But I don't know. And then we don't want to, if we do it the other direction, it kind of makes it like a glow. But maybe we will adjust that and keep those in there a little bit. That kind of looked cool with that detail. So that's one too that can be a lot of fun to play with, is shadow and highlights, and a lot of pictures can benefit from this module as well. Let's apply one more module because this video is starting to get kind of long. I'm going to do the vignette, which is going to be this very last one we have option for this vignette. Oh. So the vignette, what it lets us do, it just draws this circle here. And there's actually an outside circle as well. We can click on this little circle and move it around and change the shape of it. And if you hold your control wheel and scroll wheel out, you can zoom out so you can see what's happening here. What we want to do is put this around our subject or our focal point of the image. So we're going to put this right here. We can move it by left clicking and move where it's at. And we see this outer circle is feathering a dark, sort of a dark area. See, the corners now are sort of shadowy and dark, whereas the center is bright. So it's just applying sort of a mask overlay to make everything look a little bit more, kind of draw your attention to the center of this. And so let's do that maybe right like that. And it depends on how extreme we want it. That's a little too extreme, I think. And let's make this more oval-like. My computer is going kind of slow for some reason right now. I'm not sure what's happening. Maybe that's okay. Yeah, so that's great there. So now we can, let's come over here and click on our compress history stack, get all that history there, and let's just do a quick walkthrough and see what all we've done. I'm just gonna click on this. Oh, what happened? Did I get rid of that? Oh, I clicked on original. Okay, so we're gonna see what we've done here. I'm gonna hold down the control wheel, zoom this in. So this is our original raw picture that we downloaded. We did a little bit of sharpening. We didn't do this. This automatically happened. The orientation was unaffected. And the base curve, we did play with this a little bit, remember? So we made it look like this with our base curve. Then we used the exposure module, and we adjusted the exposure a little bit. Then we adjusted the levels, which is kind of gave it some more contrast between the light pixels and the dark pixels. Then we applied a white balance, and in white balance, what we did was the temperature. So we adjusted the temperature to make it look a little bit more warm. That's the only thing we adjusted there. Then we did, I don't think we clicked on color correction, but we didn't really do anything. So we didn't really use that one, but it's still in our history stack because we made changes and then set it back to no changes. We did this color lookup table, which is how we added some more blue color to the sky that really wasn't there originally, but we added in just for some effect. And then we adjusted shadows and highlights, which we probably could have done earlier on in our stack, but we adjusted the shadows and highlights to kind of bring more attention to some of the detail in here, I guess. And then we applied a vignette to make the viewer focus more on what's happening here. And so let's grab a snapshot of this final one and then look back here, enable the final one, and we can see our before and after. This time before is on this side and after is here. So that's pretty cool, right? Pretty cool stuff. As a final thing, so what you're going to want to do is export this. So because I did it reverse way, we're clicking on our original now. So if we go back into Lighttable, it's going to look like there's no changes made to it. So we need to go into Darkroom and click on the highest level of our history stack if we want to export it like this. And then go back to our Lighttable. Now we're seeing it with the changes. So this looks like the way we want it to look. And so to export this, because it's not going to look like that on our computer, if we go back and find the raw file, it's going to be unchanged and just how it was before. Anyway, we have to export this. So we can't just go to save. There's no file save on the menu bar or anything. What we have to do is go to export selected. And then since this is a selected image, there's only one, we just click on export. Don't worry about changing anything in here for now. And it's going to export it to a folder called Darktable Exported in the same directory as our source image. And our source image, again, is unaffected. We didn't change our source image at all. Instead, we just exported it to this folder, which is right here. It created a new folder called Darktable Exported that wasn't there before with our final image right here. So that's kind of a workflow. I kind of wanted to demonstrate some of those modules that you'll probably use when working with a lot of things, except maybe not so much the color lookup, but a lot of the rest of those are ones that you'll use all the time. in Darktable. So hopefully that kind of gave you a little bit more confidence using some of those. There is no right and wrong way. Just get in here and play. Well, there's probably some wrong ways, but there's no right ways. So just go ahead and just get in and play and see what different things do. What are we on? This is the vignette. We could have adjusted some different things on the vignette and changed that a little bit. We could have added a crop and cropped in here. So there's all kinds of different things. Look, here's a bloom. What does bloom do? What does sharpen do? Just get in and play and figure it out, and you're going to find some that you really like to use a lot. So, and when you do, add them to your favorites. So you click here and just go ahead and click the star to the side, and then you'll have a nice workflow of favorites that you do. And the more you do it, the more you're going to get comfortable with using Darktable. And in the next tutorial, or pretty soon here, we're going to learn how to save some of these presets so you can kind of save and make your process much, much quicker. But when you're first starting out, it's going to be very time consuming, and you can spend a lot of time, hours on a single photo just tweaking and trying to get it right. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Leave your questions and comments below, and I'll catch you in the next video.